Welcome to the Optimized Equine Podcast. I'm your host, Tamara Lee Barrett, and today I'm thrilled to bring you part one of a two-part conversation with Nandi Kegode, also known as the African Horsewoman. Nandi's journey in the world of horses is unlike any other you've heard. From her early days in Kenya to pursuing elite show jumping and eventually making her way to the United States, her path has been marked by both incredible highs and profound challenges that have shaped not only her approach to horsemanship, but her understanding of herself and others. In this conversation, Nandi opens up about what it means to truly respect horses, a lesson she learned early from her father, and how that foundation has guided her through different cultural perspectives on training and partnership. We dive deep into the intersection of natural horsemanship and traditional training methods, exploring how emotional intelligence plays a crucial role not just in how we work with horses, but in how we navigate our own lives. This is a raw and honest conversation. Nandi doesn't shy away from discussing her struggles with mental health and addiction, and how horses became her anchor and purpose during the darkest times. Whether you're a competitive rider or someone who simply appreciates the value that horses bring to our lives, Nandi's story will resonate with you. Please remember to support the show and my guests. It only takes a moment, but it has a huge impact. Click follow, subscribe, share, rate the show, or find us on social media. You can also visit tamaraleebarrett.com to learn more about my coaching and consulting work. Without further ado, let's dive into my conversation with Nandi Kegode, the African Horsewoman, Part 1. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
So we are going to chat today about your story, because I think your story in itself is really interesting, and I know we're going to have plenty of horsemanship things to discuss along the way. But to start us off, can you tell us a little bit about you, and we'll dive into your story.
Okay, well, as mentioned, I am Nandi, and I am Kenyan, horse person in general. At first, I identified as a show jumper, but now I think overall just horse person, aspiring horse woman is a more accurate depiction of what it is that I'm trying to do. I left my country to pursue top sport. We don't have the horsepower here or the education in Kenya that I believed originally would not be able to get me to a good level in top sport. My opinion of that has changed slightly as far as just the foundational level of things and fundamentals and everything like that. But I left Kenya in 2020 to go to school, and then decided I would really throw myself into finding out if I was a good enough rider, if I had enough feeling, enough athleticism to pursue the sport to the top level. And also as a US citizen, I decided that it would be easier to go to the US and pursue my dream of representing Kenya at the top of the sport. I grew up in polo. My first experience with horses was really Polo Ponies. My father was a very, very good player, classically trained also. And so I fell in love with showing, I would say, when I was about 8 or 9 years old. I got one pony, a pony mare, who I thought was going to really move me up the levels a bit, but she had other ideas of how that was going to go, and we got eliminated, I believe, within the first 3 jumps for the first year. So I had to figure out how to do something differently, otherwise I was never going to succeed. And I had some great friends in the UK when I went to my boarding school in the UK that actually taught me about Pirelli and natural horsemanship. And those were back in the days of VHS. So I used to watch all of the videos back at school in the UK and make notes and watch the videos over and over and over and over and over again. And then I'd go back to Kenya and I would replicate what I had seen and what I'd written down in my notes. And I would say that was when things really started to turn around for me in my in my showing and overall horsing. And I believe that shortly after I started really building that connection with my horses, because I also got quite a few problem horses, ponies that people didn't want, and I could do something with them. Also, a lot of friends gave me opportunities and good ponies to ride, which helped me out a lot. But going back to the natural horsemanship thing, we used to do really early morning rides with my dad's polo ponies through the forest and up to the escarpment to the edge of the Great Rift Valley, where there's a big drop off, if you will. And that was where we used to go and watch the sunrise. And it was the first time I noticed my horses looking at the view and appreciating the sunrise. And it was the most profound moment because I don't think I understood my animals at that point as truly being sentient. I had gotten in trouble a few times because I went on a hack with my friend. I'd make these very, very independent and careless decisions with my dad's horses because I wanted to show off or something. And I remember getting grounded and my father explaining to me that that horses had feelings and they had memory and they don't like being treated without respect. It was also disrespectful to him to not care for what he cared for. And these were all really crucial lessons that I learned early on, understanding not just the economy around certain aspects, but also responsibility. But then most importantly was the sentient recognition between myself and other animals. And yeah, horses pretty much have been unavoidable since then.
So you said you and your dad were classically trained. I think some people would be like, what? You were classically trained in Kenya? Can you fill us in on a little bit of what that looks like and how that is possible?
Yes, as a lot of people know, we are a British colony, were a British colony, we're still a part of the Commonwealth, but a lot of the settlers, colonizers who came over brought their love of horses and love of eventing and dressage, show jumping, racing. We have one of the oldest racetracks in Africa here. And there's a very big history when it comes to classical riding and showing in Kenya. And at the school that my dad went to, there were horses as well. And it was one of the top schools of the day. And there were horses. And so my dad was educated through the British system and through the British style of riding, and then found his way to polo. And then I followed suit. I don't know if the plan was for me to go to polo straight away, but that didn't happen. Even though I learned how to ride on the polo ponies, they were very big, I was very small, and it was necessary in order for me to learn how to ride properly, was to learn how to ride classically on the flat. My first riding instructor, I believe her name was Mrs. Good. We did all of the things, pony club around the world, looking off, dismantling your bridle, putting it back together, grooming your horses. Then we did pony club. We do these big sleepovers in people's gardens, and we'd be tacking up our horses and doing all of these competitions and gymkhanas and everything like that. And growing up in polo meant that I was always, when I was staying up at friends' houses, there were always horses involved. Poor horses, because we were just all over them. I don't know how we didn't get kicked or bit or anything, but I suppose they just know. But we spent from dawn until dusk at the stables. And I mean, bareback, playing superhero games in the stalls, running underneath them, like just any inch of what might have been considered their private life we violated in every way.
But you must have had good intentions and they must have understood that. So they let you live another
So,
day.
I believe so.
Yes.
And then, yeah, I then transitioned to showing. I'm not sure whose decision that was from a parental standpoint, but yeah, I then transitioned to showing, and then I had to learn, the boring stuff, which today I absolutely love. Like I love flat work and I love just classical dressage, really. So it's definitely been an evolution of self, say an evolution of self within all of that. Yes, I may have originally learned a classic way of riding, but also forgot a lot of it, and have made a lot of mistakes along the way. A lot of stuff I'm not really proud of, but I believe that a constructive attitude and a responsible attitude, especially when it comes to horses, saying, okay, I can take ownership here. I didn't do that great. I didn't do that well. I didn't ride well for this amount of time, and the horse still gave me everything that it could, and it was still really good to me. So, in honor of that animal, how can I do better moving forward?
I think it's interesting that you mentioned you went to school in the UK, and that is where you were introduced to natural horsemanship. So now you're just twisting the whole story up for me. I would have thought you went to the UK and it just nourished your classical training more, but that is where you found natural horsemanship, which I
It
didn't
is.
think was, I mean, I know now it is kind of everywhere, but I would not have thought that's where you would find it. So was that through Mrs. Good that you found that or
No,
something else?
no,
Okay.
this was through actually my boarding school in the UK in Bath. My really good friend, she rode and her mum rode, and her mum had actually gone to the US and had gotten into Pirelli and went and did the whole course and came back with all the VHS videos and everything like that. So she did showing and stuff in the UK. And at my boarding school, I couldn't really ride. There was a riding team, but it was separate from the school. You could compete on our school's behalf, but the school didn't have horses. So I was already there on an athletic scholarship. And, at that point, horses were for fun, not for life. And
Mhm.
so, I was really focused on meeting the requirements to keep my athletic scholarship. But, the bug's always been there. So,
Mhm.
and, I'd come back and I'd compete during the summer holidays or during the Christmas holidays. And I would just also feel really frustrated that I wasn't seeing the results that I wanted to see because I wasn't super consistent. And I had grooms and trainers back home who were supporting me in that. So I really had to make a decision because nobody was really coming to save me in any way, shape, or form. I did get a lot of support initially, but then it sort of when my original trainer moved back to the States, I had believe like one more trainer after that, and then I just started to do a lot of the stuff by myself. And so I suppose my lack of desire to reach out to educators here was because I was taking so much knowledge from the UK and from this family and then transferring it to what I was doing back home. But keep in mind, I'm like 13, 14, 15 at this point. So you're still rip roaring around the meter like on your little zoomy pony, right? You're not really, no one's counting strides, no one's doing anything like that. You're just
Yeah.
zipping around the course as fast as you most possibly can and hope you don't take anything down in the process. But I built a really wonderful relationship, and we had, the old battle axes, as we would call them, of the horse world here, the ladies who are incredibly proper and incredibly precise and incredibly correct and very critical sometimes. And for me, who didn't really, my dad played polo, yes, but didn't have anything to do with showing. I didn't have parents that showed or understood that component of it. It became I became isolated, I suppose, because I didn't have a support system. And being in Kenya, which is going to sound really weird, as the only black girl that rode,
Interesting. Okay.
So whenever I would get criticized in my in-hand classes or my showing classes, I didn't really understand how to correct the issue, or I just felt criticized. And so for me, that's why I sort of fell out of love with the showing side of things. And I did used to really love equitation myself and my little dun pony crackerjack. I believe we were quite good at it. We rarely weren't in the ribbons, but um, jumping just meant that I needed to go clear and I needed to go fast, and I didn't get judged on anything else but that. And that I could do.
Yeah. Did you have hunters there?
Yes, but not the American hunters. That was a culture
Okay.
shock when I saw the hunting division over there. We had proper hunters, so like the hedgehoppers,
Hmm.
very big shoulders, really big in the neck, just a lot of body, big jumpers, and, looked like they ran across the country and jumped absolutely everything in their sight. And so when I got to America and I saw the American hunters, I was a little bit shocked because I could not imagine any of those horses hunting anything.
Yeah, I agree there. But I ask because the way you described the show jumping sounds like here a lot of lower level people running around, just making it over jumps, rip roaring around. And for me, growing up here, that was not my style. That has never been my style. So for me, equitation and hunters was my jam. Not because I was looking to go ride a fox hunter, but because, oh, like it's controlled and smooth and pretty, and like I like that side of things instead of running around like a crazy person. But the judging side of it is a challenge. So I was just curious if that was a thing. It sounded like you kind of liked the running around, rip roaring around thing,
I
but
mean, it was, don't get me wrong, when you were in the hunter classes, you had to be able to open fences, close fences. Like it was, you were practicing for the hunt, essentially. So there was this element of speed, but there was an element of control and there was an element of class to it. But at the end of the day, you were expected to be able to ride across the country and keep up, and your horse is not supposed to stop, and it's supposed to keep going and not get in front of the hunt master. So there was a lot of blood from that perspective. When it came to the ponies and all of us little kids, yeah, we gunned around a lot, but not in a. We were still taught to ride correctly. Like I should make that clear. To a degree, you'd always get your handsy people and your people, but we had big classes back then. I don't think that any of the classes went over the meter 40. But the people that did compete in, B grade, C grade, D grade, A grade, they were all like the show centered around, it was like the Grand Prix, right, at Wellington or
mhm,
something. Like everything just stopped and we went to go and watch these riders. There weren't many of them, but there were enough and they rode beautifully enough for everybody to stop and watch what they were doing. And I just wanted to
mhm.
be them one day.
Yeah, nice. Can I ask one more thing before we keep going in your story? Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was, you mentioned your dad was also classically trained. I'm not in any way saying I have tons of polo experience because I certainly don't. And if you're a pro horsemanship polo person listening, please come be my guest. Let's talk about polo. But I see people when I think of polo that are not necessarily saying, oh, this horse has feelings and this horse has memories, and that's not what I see. So tell me about your dad and him teaching you that, but also being a polo person. Like, was he rare, or is that like a common culture there?
I think he was and is rare. I think he has, and I'll say this in the most respectful way that I can culturally, for an African man such as my dad or any African man, feelings are not forward. It's not culturally put in the forefront for men to show feeling. I believe my dad is a very feeling person. He's always been that way, even with our dogs and with animals in general. He's been that way, but he was always very strong about boundaries. And so, and that was with all of us, with looping the kids into the animals as well. But at the time when he would explain things, he would say, this is how much it cost me to look after you. This is how much it cost me to look after the horse. This is how much, so it was laid out like that. There were very, very good riders that were trained by the British. But I believe because, and my dad was not one of these people, but like, for example, there are some Maasai riders, right, of the Maasai tribe, and their feeling and their ability to be with the horse was just incredible. Something that you would expect to see like from the Native American culture is like these guys just understood how to communicate with animals, and they knew how to ride. Once they understood what needed to happen, it did in a very, very beautiful way. When it comes to polo, I struggle to go to polo, because I think there is less feeling than there ought to be, considering what the horses are being put through. I think that they want to work, they want to compete, they want to do a really good job. It's really difficult when it becomes all about social enterprise or social status, and the horse is taking the brunt of that. So horse welfare here is not a big deal, as big a deal as it is in Europe or the United States, which does make it difficult to advocate in some places for the horse in specific sports, especially the ones that do get a lot of attention, like polo. I am really excited for the federation that's being started here in Kenya, because it's a really great opportunity for them to educate the population and educate the public on horses being partners, but also being assets to their businesses, and why they should be taken care of as such. And Kenyans do find it quite difficult to understand the purpose of a horse. I think this concept of a horse being a pet for fun is difficult for a lot of Kenyans to wrap their head around, because it doesn't provide milk. You can't send it to market, and you can't send it for a dowry. That, culturally, like, people are trying to figure out what's the purpose of this animal, right? Donkeys and equids, mules aren't that big here. Donkeys are used, but they were close to being extinct. That was because, again, there's a very big demand for them in China, their meat, their hide, all of that sort of thing, without there being the emphasis on preservation of the species. Then they came close to extinction within 2 years. So it's a very volatile environment, and I'm really grateful that I did have such a feeling father and a very sensitive dad, that even though he wasn't telling me to stroke the horse and telling me such a good boy, like none of that happened.
Yeah.
But if I was upset, I was put on a horse and walked on the horse to relax. And so I relate that now when I do feel stressed, or I do feel like the world is getting away from me, and I sit on a horse and I ride on the flat. I just like relax through my whole body. And I'm grateful to my dad for giving me that. My mom as well, I have to throw in a shout out for her as well, because there were a lot of early mornings for that poor woman, and she does not ride. I sort of,
That's
the
great.
Lion King, when Simba goes up to Mufasa and he's like, Dad, come on, let's go. And like the parents are like rolling in the bed, and they're like, is your son before dawn, or something like that. Like, I can
Yeah.
imagine that's what my poor mom
Yeah.
was like. But you know what, bless her heart, she got up every single time. I'd say that my mum was more sensitive. Like, she talked to the horses, bring them carrots and all of that sort of thing. I think that my dad is a very utilitarian individual, in the sense that he bought the horse for a purpose. He knows how to look after the horse. He looks after the horse well. The horse is expected to do its job, and it will be well taken care of. But like, don't expect any hugs or scratches out of like wither scratches out of the situation. But there's a very clear protocol as how the horses are supposed to be treated and who the horses belong to, and how riding is a privilege that not everybody gets to have. And so you will respect this privilege accordingly.
It's when you were talking about that, it had me thinking like it's actually pretty easy to be one or the other, meaning like be the mom's role of like, I don't have to do anything with this animal, but I can just be your buddy. Like that's kind of easy. It's also kind of easy to be like, this is what you do. Like actually putting that together is a lot of work, and making that all like work together. That's I just hadn't thought of it that way before, you know? Like that's what makes what I feel like I do with horses challenging sometimes, because I want to have both. I want to be like, "Hi buddy, what are you doing?" You know, I want to be like that and the other side of it, you know, and it's totally possible. Totally possible. But anyway, okay, I've detoured you enough.
No, it's all good.
So,
I love a good detour.
so where to next in the story here?
Oh my gosh. So, weirdly enough, I joined the US military after high school and served in the US Army for 4 years as like a water engineer, water purification. And I also went airborne. So I was also stationed in the South at a big military base. And I wanted to become a mounted rider, but it required me to go through special training or go through West Point or something like that, which I wasn't prepared to do after a decade of boarding school. So I would say, I mean, I joined the military when I was 19 years old, and that was the last year that I showed as well. I would say that summer was probably one of the worst from me as a horse person, because I was a teenage girl that was obsessed with partying and boys and being at every single event. And so I just didn't have time for horses in the way that I used to. Neither did any of my friends. And so there was just this turning point in life where I wasn't riding anymore. My dad wasn't riding anymore. He had also had like a really bad injury in polo and like shattered his kneecap. It was really, really quite awful for him. And so when I went to the army, horses got sold. And yeah, that lifestyle, I guess, so that life sort of, it went away for a while. And the US Army took everything as far as my attention, my bandwidth, just everything that I knew about the world changed in an instant. And I just couldn't fit horses in anywhere. And it was a game of survival for me personally. I think that there are people that are definitely soldiers and there are people that are definitely not. I would say that I am a warrior, but not the kind the military needed. And I'm glad for that now. At the time, I was very, very sad. I wanted to go to war. I wanted to do all the things that I had been trained to do in basic training. And gosh, I'm so glad that I didn't go, because so many of my friends are not the same people or just not here anymore. And, the army saw my mental health go to a completely different place, which is where I really started this mental health journey, which leads on to eventually down the road the nervous regulation and everything that I talk about in Soundness as a Culture, the PDF that we shared. So during the military was when I really learned so much about I'd never heard of depression until I came to America. And so, I'd sort of said to my doctor, I was like, all right, well, how do I get happy again? Like, do I tell a joke? Like, how does this work? And they were like, not so black and white, straightforward. This is something that you really need to pay attention to. And I didn't. I spiraled. I was very lucky that I got out of the military under honorable conditions, but I spiraled, kept spiraling. And I think by that point, it was just a free for all for me. I just didn't care and got into a very bad way as far as drugs and alcohol. And I was just a very angry human, like a very angry person. And that led me down very, very dangerous tracks. I had done sort of like another talk. It is on YouTube, sort of like a TED talk type thing where I talk about my relationship with heroin, cocaine, and other such substances, which ended up with me actually being homeless in Las Vegas, which is not the best place to be homeless apart from the weather. That was great. Stayed warm pretty much the entire time, but the entire way through was not around horses and just really understanding myself from this bottom of the barrel consideration, right? And then when it got to a head where I couldn't be around my family anymore, I couldn't keep a job, I couldn't do anything, I just wasn't functioning as a human in our society. I decided to get my act together and to get clean, because the method that I was using wasn't working effectively. So I would say that the people that actually saved my life in a real way were the children that I looked after at the Montessori school that I got hired at in Colorado. And it was because one of the kids told me that they loved me. And I hadn't been told that in such a long time that it really humbled me and broke me down. And I decided that I wanted to try life like in a real way, and wondered if I put in as much effort into killing myself as I did into living, maybe something fun would happen, or maybe something cool would happen. And it did. And I got clean and I got sober, and 10 years of alcohol, and I think like 15 of heroin or something like that, like is where I'm at right now. But I didn't also want that to be my defining legacy. I didn't want that just to be, oh, she got clean, so that's cool for her. She can do whatever, she's accomplished something. I was like, I want to accomplish something in this new space that I'm in. And it took me down this really, really long road of mental health, emotional intelligence, understanding why we are so emotionally inept in some aspects of our society and in our education. And that led me back to horses.
We knew it would get back to horses sooner or later. So, okay. So that's what
It
led
led
you
me
back to
back.
horses.
It led me back to
But
horses.
before we move back to horses, I do have a question, and that is, like you said, you'd never really heard of depression. It wasn't talked about. Was it that it's just not talked about, or you feel like it's not a thing? It wasn't a thing until you came to the United States.
It wasn't a thing. Our
Yeah.
society was set up so differently, and I see there's more depression. There is depression in Nairobi now, and in Kenya, and in sub-Saharan Africa, but it is because we are becoming individualistic, and that is what the West is. It's a very individualistic society, and mothers don't get a break, fathers don't get a break. The amount of arguments that I've had with past partners because I want to come home and have my children raised by the tribe. And they're like, no, you must be a mother and you must work. And I was like, well, not this Kenyan. I'm so sorry. How are we supposed to do that? And I could not. My stepmom, when she left Kenya to go back to the US, and obviously she didn't have the childcare help that she did, because the women that raised me, they were raising their children at the same time, and I was holding a baby on my hip by the time I was 5 or 7 years old. I was babysitting, I was doing things around the house. I was very self-sufficient, even for a spoiled kid. So it was, or like a wealthy kid. And so I think that the village heals a lot of what the West makes you buy. And we had that naturally and there. Now that everybody lives in their boxes and is unsociable to one another, and our wild spaces are being eaten up by industry, and you watch droves upon droves of wild animals get slaughtered, and people stop caring about their fellow man or the environment because they want to live more like people in America or live more like people in Britain, not knowing that most to achieve a level of life where you're actually happy and have everything that you could possibly need is exceedingly difficult and exceedingly expensive. And over here, it costs a fraction of that to be able to just live. For me, the goal is peace, actually. And what does peace look like? For me, it looks like my animals. It looks like being self-sustaining in my growing my food, having family and culture around me. And all of that stuff was naturally available and very commonplace. And, everybody just had access to land and to their own 40 acres or whatever it is, And so it's just very weird to me that we ended up scrambling for this life that I find incredibly unappealing when I live in the United States. And I'm very proud to be a US citizen, don't get me wrong there. And I am grateful that I did serve in the US military, and I am grateful that I am a US citizen, but I am very grateful that I am Kenyan. And I'm really grateful that I understood respect through my family and through my culture, because when I was taught about respecting the horse, I understood what that meant. And being able to translate what respect is in practice as opposed to what it is in theory is one of the biggest difficulties I find in functioning in today's showing world or horse world, because people think in some cases that respecting the horse is not giving it boundaries, or what would be the other thing? Building like very extravagant bonds where they can't touch each other or see each other. And you can say you love your horses, but it is inverted. And I don't mean that to hurt people's feelings. I just mean that horses don't need all of that to be happy, and they don't need so much of what it is that we think they need. They don't think in the same way that we think they think. They don't spend time in their stalls thinking about how to mess with you the next day. So when people have that as their like forefront or precedent as to why they don't treat a horse with respect, it's confusing to me until I recognize that these people don't understand respect themselves. And respect should be at the baseline of every interaction. And I just think it's basic human decency.
And it's not a one-way conversation. The horse has to be a part of the conversation. We don't get to decide how we respect that horse. Does that make sense what I'm saying there?
It makes
You can
heaps of
think,
sense.
yeah, and I think what you said about the in practice versus in theory, gosh, that's like everything that I feel like I am trying to talk about with horses all the time. Is someone could be truly classically trained. They could know so much theory, but putting it into practice with a good mindset and a good attitude and good intentions is a whole other deal. Whole other deal. So, love a lot of the things he said there for sure. And I think there's so many people that they truly believe they're doing the best for their horse. They truly believe they're respecting them. But I think what you said about them not really, they don't have any other part of their life where they can compare that experience of like, well, we actually have to talk about what respect is. What do you need? What do I need from you? What do we need from each other? What do you need that you don't realize you need? There's so many layers, so many layers.
Yes, and it's a very odd thing, because this is going to be an extreme statement, is that I find that some slightly, I'm going to say the word, slightly sociopathic behavior in certain ways gets completely normalized within specific environments. And so when you do call that out, you are in fact the aggressor, right? And so people do actually think of you as an aggressive entity, right? But their current environment has normalized or accepted their behavior for such an extended period of time that when you come and you say this is not okay or this is not correct, this person's built their entire livelihood around this, and they've got, they're the Pied Piper of Hamelin for their particular barn. And so you get, the tiniest person who is learning all of these behaviors from a trainer that has no business modeling behavior for young children, right? But the lack of accountability is so normalized that if you come in with an accountable attitude, you are in fact the aggressive entity. And I say sociopathic in a way, or in even some cases psychopathic, because of the extent that people will go to hurt one another to prove their particular point, or to prove that they are in the know. And so a trainer, for example, that has never actually gone through a qualification process or has never consistently competed at a top level that would allow them to say, I am now in a good position to train people and horses to move through the sport, as opposed to I have experience at this level, right? And I got a couple of good wins under my belt. Now that qualifies me to completely take over your life. And if you don't do what I say, you don't get to stay here, right? And so that
I have some things to say, but yes, you go.
is really difficult to work with in a learning environment and in a horsing environment, because at a foundational level, it already speaks to disrespect. So this person that has given themselves a title, right, and said, I am now qualified to do this, has not actually had the conversation with themselves and said, I could probably assist people up until this level, but for me to say that I am qualified to get somebody here is actually inauthentic. Now, how many people have I met in the industry that are operating in that space? A lot less than I would have thought. And the gaslighting, and for a lot of people as well, the gaslighting has gotten so normalized that they don't realize that they're perpetuating it. Is the gaslighting, for example, for the people that don't know who are watching, is a good one would be, I don't think that it's going to work out for you at this barn anymore. And you're like, why? Well, can you tell me why? Can we have a conversation about it? Why are you making a big deal about it? I'm just saying, I'm not saying it's going to happen today, but I don't see, but okay, wait, so you are saying that I can stay, or are you saying that I can go? Because I'm confused and I feel like you were about to tell me that you were going to fire me. And then they jumped into why are you always making it about you? Why are you always being so dramatic? After everything that we've done for you, nobody else would hire you. Nobody else is going to train you. Nobody else is going to get you to the level that I'm able to get you at. And so it's the people that are naive to the fact that this person's emotional response to your behavior was unordinary, and it is in fact their response to you that is the problem. But because you're coming at it from a genuine and authentic place, you begin to self-check, right? And you begin to question yourself and you become unsure. And then they jump on that insecurity and they keep building off of that. And then in order to survive the industry, and especially when you get to the top levels, you have to have a very, very thick skin, and you have to be able to defend yourself from those types of people consistently. Now, that same person is communicating in a disrespectful manner. Can they possibly communicate in a respectful manner to the horse? I don't think so. I don't think so. And I also believe that a society or an industry that communicates passively, do you maybe want to like that? Or could you maybe, when they mean, please do this thing, or can you make sure? Imagine saying to your horse, do you maybe want to like do that, but meaning actually I need you to do a canter, but like could you maybe canter on the correct lead, but I'm actually going to ask you for a canter. Like it doesn't make sense, right? So why communicate in that manner that is going to cause confusion and is going to cause upset, and then you're going to turn around and smack the horse and whip the horse because you don't know how to communicate, and then you don't know how to be accountable for the fact that you can't communicate. So in that
Yeah, it
respect,
goes, a lot of people, and I certainly have been there, it goes from wishy-washy, not real solid, not real clear, to like, dang it, ugh, and then it's just aggressive. Rather than being more clear and more obvious, it becomes mad because that wishy-washy, nice way didn't work. I feel like a lot of people end up with horses in that trap of like, oh, I'm going to be nice and soft, and that turns into wishy-washy and unclear, and then, oh, that didn't work, so I got to go back to this other thing. No, actually, there's like a whole ocean of room for expanding and learning how to communicate, and there's like a big space between those two things. But I think a lot of people will, let's say they started out in that more like aggressive style of training and they dip their toe in this other thing they heard about. Oh, no, that doesn't work. No, you're just being wishy-washy. Your horse doesn't hear you.
exactly. And that's where I think they are our greatest mirrors, is that if you get so frustrated that it turns into you whipping the horse or beating the horse because you just cannot imagine letting this animal get away with it, right? I'm not going to let him get away with it, And it's like, get away with what?
Yeah, not understanding you? Okay.
And the thing is that like sometimes one of the hardest trainers I ever had gave me one of the best books that's ever taught me. It's a I believe it's called like Apropos and the Rider or something. And it says like sometimes you just gotta walk away. Like it's not your day to succeed with this animal today. It's not your day to succeed with that person today. And so I think the industry needs to stop this practiced courtesy, right? And I believe that there was a woman had written about this on Facebook, and it got a bunch of shares, is that it's such a client run sport that a lot of trainers just feel powerless because they can't necessarily do right by the horse. They can't necessarily do right by the person they're training because there's so much money involved. And it's like, if I'm spending this much money, I better see results. And it's like, well, you're dealing with another animal that is nonverbal. That is nonverbal. And your money doesn't buy you emotional intelligence, nor does it buy you emotional regulation in a creature that is not affiliated with your species. So if that's the case, then how can I approach the sport in a way that I don't have to take a lunge whip to the horse's legs in order to get results? I don't have to, ride with two dressage whips and just to keep the horse focused or in line or in training. I shouldn't have to drug horses the night before the show so that people can feel comfortable in their classes, like let's just take one good long hard look in the mirror. We know shaving whiskers isn't okay for the horse, what, but they don't look pretty, like learning signs of stress and just signs of pain. It's very easy to Google it, right? And even if you're afraid to look at the phone, give yourself 10 seconds and then flip over the phone and watch a couple of videos, because at that point nobody knows that you're taking responsibility apart from yourself, and you can do it in a dark room where nobody's watching, I promise. And so I think at a very basic level, we bred the horses to be so sensitive to their surroundings and to their environment so that they don't touch a jump, or they trot and pee off out of their absolute skin. Do the equivalent and get yourself under control. Get your body under control, get your emotions under control. Find a buddy that you can have genuine conversations with, and people that just aren't going to lie to you. And there's the riders that call horses monsters or say, I don't care, this is how I ride, they will adapt to how I ride. Why would they? They're an independent individual thinking being. Like, the industry does this thing where it epitomizes specific riders because they have an incredible amount of feeling, or they say feeling can't be taught. It can, in my opinion, and I believe I've said this to you before, is that it's awareness. It's physical awareness. It's body awareness. It's emotional awareness. That is what feeling is. And if a horse doesn't want to be around you or doesn't like you, it's probably because you don't like yourself. Deep, deep down, you don't like yourself. You don't want to be around yourself. You force people to be around you. You force people to act a certain way around you so that you can feel better. And so if you're not asking yourself those kind of questions when the horses are giving you adverse reactions, and your response is to smack them and to call them names or whatever, and just remember, like, they're not human. They are literally designed to do what nature has designed them to do. And if they exhibit a negative reaction around a person, we taught them that. They did not come out the womb wicked. We likely made them wicked. And we have to take responsibility for that. And again, I'll be the first to say I've done a lot of stuff I'm not proud of. However, I can be proud of the fact that I have made a decision to look at myself in a way that will allow the horse to have a better experience. When I listen and I'm riding, do I hear a happy tale or do I hear an angry tale? Is the horse strong because it's trying to get away from me, or is it genuinely bitted incorrectly or something? Like, there are all of these questions that we need to ask ourselves that make us worthy of being in the same space as horses, or any pet, any animal for that instance. But I did see one Australian horseman say that the horse is the most abused domestic animal in the world, and I would have to agree.
I would agree with you too. I'm not sure everyone would agree with us, but I would agree too. One of the things, like, this will be my trigger, I'll bring up. I am so triggered by horses whose mouths and necks and heads are just completely disrespected every single day of their lives. It triggers me. It is hard for me to watch that. That's one of the things about polo. I feel like that when I think of polo, that's what I think of, is a lot of strong bits and restraints and things. And it's not just polo by any means. Even just the most casual riders, they don't stop and think like, well, what would that feel like if that was my head or neck? I know we're not shaped anything like a horse, but they are feeling things. And if anything, their long neck makes them more vulnerable, honestly, than us.
Agreed.
And I've had this discussion with Daniel Dauphin actually about what is considered abuse, and his take on that episode 22, for anyone who wants to listen to it. It's a great one. Also, our mutual friend McCrell is in that episode as well. But anyway, I digress. He says, like, there has to be a bad intention, otherwise it's not ignorance. And I get what he's saying, but I think that saying it that way just lets people stay in that place. Oh, it's like, this is just how we do it. Like you said, like it just becomes normal that this is what it looks like. It is normal, even at very high level top riders, people who have been at the top of sport for years. You can go watch them, and not all of them, but a majority of them, those horses, from my perspective, are having their faces annihilated every ride. Why is that okay? For me, it's not okay. But this is how, like, how do you have that conversation with somebody? You know,
Well,
it's not easy.
I think it's very hard because again, people are very sensitive and they want to be spoken to a specific way, and the truth is hard to hear sometimes, and again, it's someone's opinion. But if you could say, all right, is there anything to what that person has just said, or like, yeah, there's absolutely nothing to what that person has said, is another thing. And then working for top riders, I don't think it is ignorance because they have the best in the world at their disposal. The difference is, in my opinion, is that sometimes the best in the world don't correct a lot of the people that they're training because they're getting a lot of money. Or those people that are celebrated and the best in the world came up in a really hard industry, right? And what we have to also remember is that this old derivative came from, especially, well, I think show jumping, eventing is like wartime, right? Dressage, like wartime, and where your horse was your partner, your horse mattered more than anything else because it was going on the battlefield with you, right? And maybe it wasn't going to make it through, but it was still a shield somewhat, or it still took you from point A to point B. So when people fuss about the horse, so that I don't care about anything, I don't care about people, I only care about the horses. Well, you don't. Because if you don't know how to care about people, or you don't know how to care about your own, then you don't know how to take care of something else. Yes, I don't enjoy a lot of human beings. That is a true statement for me. However, I do understand how to treat human beings with respect because I was taught respect. And respect doesn't necessarily mean that you like what you are doing. I do not like some of the things that I do in order to be respectful, in the sense that my grandmother, for example, may tell me to put my shoes away in my room right at this moment. And I don't want to because I am almost 40 years old and I can put my shoes away wherever I damn well please. But that is my grandmother, and she does not have time for my BS because guess what? She has lived on this earth a good few amount of decades. She's given birth to a good amount of kids. She's raised those kids. She's educated those kids, and she's fed me and looked after me and educated me. And so if that woman tells me to put my shoes away, I'm going to do it because she's earned
Hmm.
it. She's earned it.
Yeah,
She
but
doesn't have
let's
to
flip the
anything me
script there.
personally. What's that?
Let's flip the script there, though. There's in that the way you tell that example could
Yeah,
very much be a student and their trainer who is doing something that I would say is old school. You shouldn't do that. I would never do that at this point. Yet that person goes, but I have to respect this person. They've been doing this for this many years. They've got this title or medal or whatever. So how do you balance respect? There's probably no real answer to this, but we'll just say it as a question. How do you balance respecting someone but also listening to yourself when it comes to old traditions? There's so many things that are just commonplace in horseland that I would say are outdated, old school, don't do it, won't do it again. How do you balance that?
100%. 100%. Okay, this is a really, really good question. What is respect and what is blind followership? So that person that is medaled and that is decorated and everything like that tells you to do something that you know is or feel is inherently wrong. However, if you go against this person I would say 99% of the time, those people know that what they're asking you to do is wrong. If you choose not to do what they are asking you to do and you know it is wrong, that has got nothing to do with respect. That has got everything to do with integrity and bravery and courage, which are hard things to embody and to put out there when there's someone that you look up to, because I've definitely worked for riders that I respected on the TV. And then when I went to work underneath them, I lost respect for them, but I blindly followed because I wanted to achieve my goals and I didn't want to get blacklisted out of the sport. I believe that the respectful thing to do in that instance is choose whether that person is worthy of your respect moving forward, and what is the most respectful thing that you can do for your peace of mind moving forward. So that's why a sounding board, I think, is really important. I think mentorships are really important. I think that having big sisters, big brother type people at the barn and having that community, again, it goes back to the village, right? Is that there's supposed to be this village of accountability with the elders and the new people and then all the people in between. And so I respect my grandmother because she's earned it. But if she asks me to do something unreasonable, I can say, I love you and I respect you, but this request is unreasonable to me. And therefore, I cannot do it. And that person may perceive you as being disrespectful in that space. But I think that when you consult with enough people and you get a generalized response of like, yeah, that person was born straight after the flood. So like their concept of what is respectful and what is not respectful. Because for example, in my culture, it is disrespectful to tell your parent no, right? Well, that's a recipe for disaster. If you can never say no to your parent or create a boundary, that can head into really, really dangerous territory. And so for the trainers, and I've had trainers that lie, cheat, steal, and will still show up ringside and expect you to give them the utmost respect, but they've let you down in every other way possible that would allow you to safely respect that person. So now you're back into we're back into this blind followership, and then eventually you do get depressed, and then eventually you do become hypersensitive and anxiety, and then you must go and get medicated so that you can be at the barn or so that you can be around said trainer. That's crazy. That's crazy. Yeah. So does the industry understand the difference between A, respect, B, blind followership, and C, self-respect? And those are three different components. And when you can take the blind followership bit out and you're left with the respect and self-respect, right? You can say, when I look back at myself in 10 or 15 years, am I going to be proud of the decision that I made this day? And that will allow you to gauge your self-respect. And don't go and sound yourself off a mirror that you know is not going to return the reflection that you need and is going to return the reflection that you want. If you're 600 pounds and you go to your girlfriend and you ask if I'm fat and she says no, then, and sorry, that might be fat shaming, but like my point is like, if you're morbidly obese and it is affecting how you live and you cannot help yourself, and you go to somebody and they lie to you, then that is not a good sounding board. Find friends that will give you an honest but gentle response that will allow you to self-reflect in a way that is significant enough for you to decide whether to make a change or not. And if you make a change for the positive, then you can be really happy with that. If you stick to the status quo or you make a change that goes against yourself, then you be prepared to take full responsibility for that down the road. But be sure again to surround yourself with the type of people that will respond to your courage when you do have to have those courageous moments, and that will draw that hard boundary for you when you need that boundary to be drawn and you're taking the proverbial piss.
Yeah, so when you're saying all that, I was jotting down that if someone is worthy of your respect, sometimes that can be our own issue, is we just, oh, I respect this person, they're really not worthy of it. Someone who is worthy of it is going, if you disagree with them, for one, they're going to be willing to have that two-way dialogue. And I think
Yes.
that is important when we think of the horse training. If it's like an I said so, period, that person can be that way, but if that's how it's presented and that's the end of the conversation, it's not a real dialogue. They need to teach you, not tell you. If someone is willing to teach you why their way is the way, and that's why you should do it their way, I think that's a different thing, rather than just like, this is how I do it, period. If someone's worthy of your respect, they're going to help you understand it until you're on their side because you understand their side, not just because you said, okay, whatever you say.
Exactly. And I think that people need to understand that your horse fearing you or people fearing you is not respect. It is just fear.
Definitely.
And that's a very big distinction. If people fear you, they do not respect you. There's a very big difference. The fear is coming and it will lead to self-preservation. I believe that respect leads to empowerment. Those are just my personal thoughts.
Now, we have been at it a while here, and we have not even talked about you getting back into horses and going back to Kenya. We are going to have to chat again because I think we've only gotten this far in your story, but that's great. I think this was an awesome conversation. Yes, part B,
fun.
part 2. So let's do it again soon. I hope you enjoyed the show. Remember to click follow or subscribe, rate the show, and share with a friend. Visit TamaraLeeBarrett.com for more info on coaching, consulting, and links to our socials. Until next time, happy horsing.